record here. Okay, so I know that some of you guys have had a chance to attend all the lectures and then possibly just do your review with the recordings that I sent out. And then I know that some of you guys have missed some of the lectures up until this point. So hopefully you've had a chance to catch up. And we've got today and we also have Friday so that we can kind of consolidate everything. And if you've got questions that come up in the interim, we can put them out there. And then Bernie put a question onto the group. Bernie, you were saying, is it maybe advisable to eliminate abdominal strengthening work during pregnancy? And, you know, I would have to say in the third trimester, it's very easy to give a woman a really good workout without doing any of the classic abdominal work, like the chest lifts, obliques, even the half rollback, for example, you know, because the abdominals are so stretched out that even doing pelvic floor or thinking of, now we talk about flattening the abdominal wall, right? But for pregnant women, you tell them to hug the baby, you know, and even that action of hugging the baby contracts the abdominals because they're so stretched out. And for a lot of women, that is enough of a workout as it is. You don't have to push it any further than that. So it's, again, I go back to the fact that it's such an individual thing for each woman as they go through pregnancy about how their body's responding. Is this the first bit of exercise they've ever done since high school, and now they're pregnant and they decide to start exercising again? You know, it's just like, okay, well, how far do you push it? Or you've got somebody who comes to Pilates and yoga 4 times a week, now they're pregnant, then you're dealing with like a different connection to the body, a different level of strength and understanding what's happening with the body as well. So it's always just a matter of assessing on an individual basis how hard you push. Yeah? Cool. Is that your little one, Amelie? Gorgeous, hey? That white
Yeah.
You didn't want to leave. I could see you go, go, go.
No.
She's going, no, no.
Yeah. It's a he, actually, but yeah.
Is it a boy?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a bit clingy.
And then the other thing that came up is that Kelly, I sort of trimmed the video and then I sent the video out without watching it. And then Kelly actually said, I'm so sorry that apparently the camera focused on her while we were doing the hypopressive techniques and I was demonstrating. So you guys couldn't really see what was happening. So I did say to Kelly that I will redo it and I'll demonstrate it again and we can maybe all try it together just to consolidate that information with the hypopressives as well. So, you know, and just to say again that it is like quite a simple technique, but the setup and the precision is so important because you could actually do it incorrectly. And the whole thing about hypopressives is creating that vacuum of that lifting of the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. And if you do it incorrectly or in the wrong setup, it's quite easy to actually increase the pressure, which is that hyperpressives, which kind of defeats the whole purpose. So it's definitely worthwhile actually doing some classes, looking at doing a course or a workshop, especially if you are in Cape Town and Shirley is available to you as well. And I'm not sure if there's anybody in Windhoek, but there's definitely somebody in the UK as well, Hypopressives UK, that you could actually do some sessions with. And even now, everyone's online now, so that won't be a problem.
Can I just ask you a question, Renee, please?
Sorry?
Can I just ask the question, please?
Of course.
It was something from, I think it was from, you know, the seated twist? Because I don't know why I've made this note here, because it's obvious that you can do that in the mermaid seating with your legs, can't you, as well?
Absolutely. So
the legs are crossed, I think. And I don't know where I've got this in my head from. Is it, you're going over like a figure 8 with, can you do it that way as well?
Listen, absolutely. The whole thing about that seated twist is you're using your arm to create a movement that is actually intended for the spine.
That's right. It's just that sometimes I think, you know the mermaid one when we do the arms open and back?
Yes.
Sometimes I find people find that a little bit awkward on the shoulder. So I thought if they did it under, sort of under and over, like figure eight, like a snake.
Absolutely. So any of that will work. So, I mean, I like to do it seated cross-legged and getting up onto a bolster. And then it literally is going up and back, and then it's a dive forward. But the
dive
point is,
forward,
like,
yes.
It's this and this. It's this. So you're really just mobilizing the spine. So you know what? If you wanted to go up and back and scoop it down and up and back and scoop it down, it almost doesn't matter which way the arm is going.
Yeah.
Because it's actually creating mobility through the spine as well.
And it's getting spiral lines of fascia, isn't it, as well? It's really good for the spiral lines.
And then also the front and the back arm line as well. All
excellent.
Together.
Thank you.
You can very easily do that in like a seated mermaid. You could do it there. You can hold baby. The other thing you can do is take one leg out, one leg in, and this is called dragonfly, which, you know, it doesn't seem like a lot, but this is an incredibly easy way to kind of align the pelvis, because you can actually feel both of your sit bones are connected, and then you can do your waves here. So you can play with the choreography, and you can play with the leg positions as well. You can do it
because it's great for the older clients, you see, as well, for the older clients, because they can't all get the legs up, can they, to cross the legs?
Exactly. So you can modify it however works for the clients.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Absolute pleasure. Okay, so guys, I'm just gonna turn off this light. I always feel like I've got this strange red glow on me when I've got my heater on. So let me just flick that off so I'm sort of back to a normal tone. There we go. So we're going to do a little review of the hypopressives. So Amelie, did you have a chance to watch the last session where we spoke about hypopressives?
No, unfortunately not.
That's fine. That's fine.
I will do it this afternoon, I think.
Chance for you to just get a sense of what it is. So there is this correlation between the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. So obviously when we breathe in, the diaphragm flattens down, and then the pelvic floor has to kind of give way a little bit like a trampoline, because all your internal organs are getting pushed down, right? So the pelvic floor has to have a little bit of softness and give, plus the abdominals have to have a little bit of softness and give. And then when you breathe out and the diaphragm lifts up, then the pelvic floor can lift and the abdominal wall can flatten in slightly. So that's like normal breathing. During pregnancy, you've obviously got baby in the way. Working with hypopressives during pregnancy, you really have to be an expert in the area. I use hypopressives more postnatally, because after delivery is where you're going to possibly have pelvic floor weakness, so you've got incontinence. So a lot of women cannot actually control weeing in their pants, especially if they have to sneeze, cough, laugh, any kind of fast twitch movement, or even if they need to go to the toilet and they just don't get there in time. So that's urinary incontinence. That's a very common issue sort of postnatally. But also remember, guys, we were talking about that separation, that diastases. And you can feel it, oftentimes you can feel the separation during pregnancy, but it's afterwards, if it isn't knitting together, this hypopressive breathing technique can really make a big for a lot of people. So I'm going to show you again how I demonstrated it last time, where we do 3 sets of breathing, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, and then we do what is called a false inhale, okay? So the false inhale is where we seal the nose, we seal the lips. And in fact, I know some people, if they have difficulty with it, they'll literally block their nose like that, so no air is coming in and out. But then what you do is you expand your ribs as if you're inhaling, and that literally pulls the ribs apart, pulls the diaphragm, and you get this vacuum sensation, which causes an automatic lifting of the pelvic floor, and then it draws the rectus abdominis together. And then you do that for about 8 counts if you can. It takes a while to build up to it. And then you break that false inhale with an inhale to go into the next round, okay? So the way that you can tell if you or your client is doing it properly is this little area here is called the sternal notch, okay? And what you're going to see is that this actually gets defined, it gets sucked in. So I'm just going to show you what the breathing looks like, okay? So you're going to breathe in through the nose, about 3 or 4 counts. Breathe out through the mouth, about 4 or 5 counts. Soft belly, breathe in through the nose. Breathe out through the mouth. So this is all very soft in different positions. One more time, breathe in through the nose. Breathe out through the mouth. Seal the lips, seal the nose. False inhale. Could you see that it was almost getting suctioned in here and above the collarbone? So that's one of the signs that you look for when you're doing the false inhale. Now, I'm just going to sit up a little bit higher and I'm going to lift my shirt so you can see my ribs and my abdominals. So along with the sternal notch, this is basically what's happening around the ribs and the abdominals. So I'm just going to do those 3 breaths, just like I did a second ago. So it'll be inhale, exhale. This has to stay soft. And you know how many women don't want to let this go soft, right? We all want to hold it. Encourage people to just let it go. Inhale, exhale. We're going to do 1 more set. Breathing in. Breathing out, and now I'm sealing my lips, sealing my nose, false inhale. And then exhale. So could you guys see that lifting of the rib cage? Now I wasn't deliberately pulling my abs in, but could you see that there was almost like a narrowing of the waist? And a pulling in this and up. And that's that whole internal vacuum that happens when you do the false inhale. So, and by the way, just as a matter of interest, this is the technique that bodybuilders in the 70s used to use. So you think about Arnold Schwarzenegger, they used to actually do this hypopressive style breathing. And if you take a look at the shape of those bodybuilders, where they had a very narrow waist, and it was due to the hypopressives. And now you take a look at bodybuilders now, and they're definitely almost more barrel-like around their bellies. They haven't really been using this hypopressives technique. So it's a classic example where you can see how it affects the shape around the midsection here with that breathing technique. So now the other thing is, you can do hypopressives breathing in a lot of different ways. So you can do it literally like this, letting the belly hang. You can do it on all 4s. You can do it in a seated position cross-legged. You can do it lying on your back. You can do it standing up against a wall with your hands on the wall. So there are lots of different positions you can do it in. And one of the reasons we change positions is, first of all, to make it functional, so you don't get used to doing this in one position only. But it helps connect these muscles here, called the serratus anterior, And remember, guys, the serratus anterior helps to basically stabilize the scapula, and it assists with our breathing and out of the rib cage. So the serratus connection is really important here. And the other reason we change position around is to help us find softness in the belly. So for me personally, there are two positions that I'm just like, wow, I can really feel that connection. So for me, I find the best connection here, because I can really, it's almost like I can link gravity, then my belly soften, like this position really works for me. And then also lying flat on my back, this position here works really well for me. So, you know, what connects for one person may or may not connect for someone else. So again, it goes back to doing some classes in hypopressives or doing a workshop, and then you can get that experience of it as well. I see Maya's just put in a class. So Renee, in a postnatal yoga class, what are thoughts of teaching Uddiyana Bandha instead? With a full body lock, it feels like the same thing. So you know what, Maya, so guys, the Uddiyana Bandha, you're talking about the pelvic floor lock, hey? The root lock and then the abdominal and the chin lock.
So I'm talking about Mula Bandha, the root lock, and then Uddiyana Bandha, the abdominal lock, and then Jalarada Bandha, the throat lock. You don't have to maybe do the throat lock, but it feels to me like the same thing.
Yeah, listen, I haven't done all three of those together, but from what you're saying right now, it could be the same thing, except the difference being we don't lock the abdominals in this particular technique. We keep the belly soft, but definitely there is that placement of the chin, and then it's that connection into the pelvic. So the position is probably very, very similar. It's just that we don't really talk about the root lock or the abdominal lock, whereas we will talk about the chin lock here because you want to keep the back of the neck lengthened. And to be perfectly honest, I think if it's in a postnatal class, it would be fantastic. Definitely, because as soon as you bring that into postnatal and you're getting women to start to become aware of pelvic floor, abdominals, I think you'd get great results with it as well.
So I just wanted to ask one more thing. So when you do the hypopressive, I found a video on YouTube. And so I understand the breathing into the sides of the chest, so that there's that movement. And then the movement that she describes is that, I'll go like this a little bit, is that you pull the belly in and up and hold it. Is that right? But then at the same time, you say that you keep your belly soft. So even though you're pulling it in and upwards, there's no tension. Does that sound right? Is that hypopressive? Do I have that right?
That is right, except, now listen, it might be a different teaching technique. I've only ever done this with Shirley. And we don't do any cueing about pulling belly in and up because it happens naturally. You don't even have to do anything and the belly will pull in and it will pull up, but I don't even talk about it to people because it just happens. And then it's the same thing with the pelvic floor. We don't even cue the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor is naturally going to suction upwards as soon as you do that lifting of the ribs and the separating. So it could maybe be a different teaching technique and different cueing that someone's using. That was the other thing, remember, I was saying as well, is that for women that maybe are menstruating, that if you have a tampon or a menstrual cup inserted, you shouldn't be doing hypopressives, because instinctively with that lift of the pelvic floor, whatever you have inserted is going to get sucked right up as well. So you can do it when you're menstruating, but then you have to just use a sanitary pad and remove anything that's being inserted is quite important as well.
I wonder if that's the same for Uddiyana Bandha. Must be.
I think so, you know, if you're doing that really strong lift of the pelvic floor. But now here's the other thing, is that when you do the bandha, so when I do a lock through the pelvic floor, it's more of a grip and not so much of a lift. And even if I do the lift, it only lifts so far, because that's me doing voluntary control. So don't forget now, with this false inhale and the hypopressives, there's a natural suction. It's like a vacuum, lifting up this way, which is going to draw up much more than me simply going squeeze and lift. So, you know, I would imagine when you're actually just doing Mula Bandha, when you're doing that lower root lock, you know, you probably won't get that same level of lifting as with that vacuuming.
Okay.
You know?
Thank you.
So guys, I'm going to demonstrate the lying down position to you guys for the hypopressives. So I'm going to do 3 sets of breathing, and then I'm going to do 1 false inhale. I'm going to hold it for about 8 counts, and then I'm going to break the seal, and I'm going to move into the second set. Just so you can see the position, listen to the breathing, maybe see what's happening with the vacuuming. The abdominals go a little bit concave, and then maybe we can all try it together so you guys can have an experience of it again. Okay, will it be helpful for you to do this, to have a little review of it?
Thank you.
Cool, so I'm just gonna angle my camera down so that you guys can see me nicely there. And move this back slightly. All right, so the positioning here is that you have your feet, so normally we've got the knees bent at about 90 degrees, and we want to switch off these hip flexor muscles. So when you pull the feet in tight, shortens the hip flexors, so we actually want to move the feet further away than we normally would. And then what we do is we flex the ankles so that the heels are digging down, and then I get people, I'm just going to actually move my shirt here so you can see, I get people to do a little bit of a push with the heels, and then a pull with the heels. So I get them to go through posterior and anterior pelvic tilt. And then you can watch them, but you can also get them to do hands-on. So when I push with my heels, I go into a very strong posterior tilt. So what I need to do is almost like a little bit of a pull with my heels. Now I'm in neutral, and then I dig my heels down. So I'm stabilizing neutral here using my legs, which means my belly can soften. Okay, so this is, again, an integral part of the setup. And then, palms facing up, elbows are slightly bent, but I am active. I'm imagining that I'm pushing the ceiling away from me, because that's going to now start recruiting my serratus anterior. And then I've got my chin in a little bit. So Maya, this is what we were talking about with that little chin lock, right? So chin is tucked in very slightly. And I don't even think about tucking. All I do is I lower my eye line. So as soon as I bring my eye line down a little bit, it brings my head into place automatically. So there is my setup. And now I'm going to go into my breathing. I'm going to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. One more time, in through the nose, out through the mouth, sealing my lips, false inhale. And then I will go into the second set. Could you guys see the lift of the ribs, and there's this natural suctioning and narrowing around the waist here? Okay. So guys, the other thing is, you know, there are some people that if you've got sort of like this posture, where you have a rounded upper back posture, which let's face it, is so common nowadays, and you've got this tightening around the front of the ribs, imagine how your diaphragm is almost getting tightened, right? So now, you know how many people, when you get them to breathe, the diaphragm is so tight, it doesn't want to allow that release. So for example, Shirley will actually teach people how to give themselves a self-massage to help them release the diaphragm, because that's also part of creating that vacuum as well. So it might be like another little issue that people might struggle with, is how do you release your diaphragm? Cool, so Julie's asking, how many sets do we do? So as a general rule, in each position, we'll do 3 sets, and then we'll take a little break in between. And so when Shirley teaches a class, she doesn't, so she's a Pilates instructor, but she doesn't do the classic abdominals anymore, okay? This is her abdominal work. So she'll do a set of 3, maybe in that position, and then we're going to do a hamstring release, and then maybe we're going to do a little bit of spine to the supine, and then we get into the next position and we do another set. So it's the 3 breaths in and out, false inhale, and you repeat that sequence 3 times, and then you move into another position, and then maybe you go into a cat stretch, and maybe a little bit of a hip flexor stretch, and then she'll take you into the next position, and you do like another set of the hypopressives breathing. So she does a lovely class because it's the hypopressives breathing combined with other movements, so that you get a little bit of a break in between as well, which is great. All right, are you guys keen to try it? Yeah? Okay, fantastic. So guys, come down onto your mats. I'm going to move to gallery view so that hopefully it's going to be able to record all of us on the screen so we can see. So come and lie on your backs and just lie in your usual position with your knees bent. And then place your hands onto your pelvis so you can feel the pubic bone and the 2 pelvic bones on the side. And then I want you to walk your feet a little bit away from you. So take a step forward with your feet, and you should feel immediately like your hip flexors soften quite a bit there. And then just lift your toes up so that your heels are connected to the ground. And then start to just push with your heels and rock your pelvis so that you tilt into an imprint. And then pull with your heels so that you create a hollow in your lower back and go towards an anterior tilt. Now just do that a few times. Tilting forwards and backwards. And then settle yourself in a neutral position. And then wherever your heels are, the pulling or the pushing, dig your heels down so that you really are anchored there. And it gives you an opportunity to take your hands and poke your tummy, and it should feel completely soft and easy. You shouldn't be working or bracing into the abdominals right now. All right, now tuck your chin in, lengthen along the back of the neck so your eye line comes down. Lift your hands up, palms facing up, bend your elbows, and bring your hands just above your heart. So a little bit forward above your sternum. And then imagine that you're going to push the ceiling away from you. So your arms are active. Soft bend, heels down, lengthening the back of your neck. And we're going to start with a gentle inhale through the nose. 2, 3, exhale through the mouth. 2, 3, 4, breathing in. 2, 3, soft bend, breathing out through the mouth. 2, 3, 4, one more set, breathing in. 2, 3, energy through the hands, breathing out. 2, 3, now seal your lips and false inhale. Feel the ribs pulling out and wide. Keep your belly soft. Keep expanding the ribs, no air coming in and out. And we break with an inhale. 2, 3, breathing out. 2, 3, 4, and inhale. 2, 3, strong hands, breathing out. 2, 3, dig the heels down, breathing in. 2, 3, soft bellies, breathing out. 2, 3, 4, seal your lips and false inhale. Expand the ribs, expand the ribs, expand the ribs, expand the ribs, and inhale. 2, 3, and exhale. Just relax the arms, relax your feet. Ooh, guys, you know it's crazy. You know where I feel it so much is in my hands and arms. Hey? Hey, let's just come and have a quick chat about that. So if you're not used to having that position with the hands, I mean, that's a workout and a half, isn't it? Can you guys feel that, or is it just me? Okay, good. Not just me. So that's also why after you've done one set, it's so nice to take a break and then just take your body into another movement, a stretch, a rotation, whatever it is, before you go into the next one.
I can feel the hamstrings.
Oh yeah. Oh, isn't that interesting? So obviously when you had your heels digging down, you must have been doing a little bit of a pull with the heels to get yourself into neutral. That's a lot of hamstring work.
I was struggling to not hold the stomach in.
No, exactly. And that relates to Maya's question. Maya's saying, what is the reason for the heels? If you can activate your legs, so whether or not you're pushing, which is going to be quadriceps, or pulling, which is going to be hamstrings, it means your legs are holding your pelvis neutral, not your abs. Because you need to let your abs go.
That's right.
The abs have to be soft. And for us Pilates instructors, that's really weird. Right? Hey, Julie?
Yeah.
We want to hold it. You got to hold it. Yeah, so it's a bit of a mental thing to switch it off.
Mm-hmm. Can I just, because I've missed a few of the sessions and I've been doing it on catch-up, just run through the benefits of the hypopressives again for the stomach? Is it going to make the stomach stronger? Because people are going to ask these questions, aren't they? Because if I did it in a class, for example, and they're not holding the belly in and they're not doing the crunches like normal and stuff like that, how's it going to, what's it benefiting them?
Yeah, so what it does is it improves what is called the resting tone of the muscles.
Right.
So you know, when you go to the gym and you do your biceps curls, now that's work. So you're working, but then when you walk out of the gym, assuming that you're like a normal person, you're not going to walk out flexing your muscles all the time. You don't have to, because what you did by doing your exercise is you improved the tone of the muscle. And now you can go about normal activity, but this has changed on a subconscious level, okay? Without, it's an involuntary thing. You've just improved what is called the resting muscle tone. It's exactly the same thing. We're improving the resting tone of the diaphragm, the abdominals, so the transverse plus the rectus abdominis and the obliques and the pelvic floor. So that's the whole principle behind it, is improving the muscle tone so that it's going to just maintain itself involuntarily when you're done the exercise.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Pleasure, guys. All right, so I think what we can do now is move on a little bit to some more of our repertoire. So we've still got a fair number of exercises to go through. So we're going to talk through all of them. We're going to check some of them out. And again, I just want you guys to be able to think outside of the box of going, okay, how do I make this easier for that one person that I'm working with or in the class that is struggling, maybe is in like, she's due in 4 days, as Maya's friend was, you know, or there might be somebody in their second trimester in the class who's still like very mobile, barely showing, tiny little baby bump. So we want to kind of know, okay, well, how do we make this workable for everybody that's coming into the class with us? So in our manual, which is right here, on page 31, we've done all the previous exercises before. So on page 31, we have triceps push-ups. And this is such a fantastic way to strengthen the upper body and the shoulder girdle. And, you know, we may not think about it because obviously we are very concerned about supporting the lower back and the pelvis and the abdominals, but upper body strength is so important as well, especially once baby is born, because now you're going to be breastfeeding, you're holding baby, and the number of women that struggle with neck and upper back tension and tightness, and oh my God, that is really sore, right? So improving upper body strength or maintaining it is so important as well. So we've got some triceps push-ups here that are the classic push-ups, and we can go through those. And then I want you guys to start thinking outside the box of how we might modify this for people. So guys, if you have your baby available, if you want to put baby in, you can, all right? And again, this is always just such a nice way for you to start thinking, well, how is this going to feel for somebody who has this bump out in front of them? So you guys are welcome to come and join me on the mat if you want to have an experience of it. So with the tricep push-ups, in a classic push-up, no pregnancy, okay, no baby there, we would have wrists below shoulders, we would have knees underneath hips, and we would simply be going tricep dip and pressing up again. There's already a few modifications that you might need to do here. You might very well need to take the knees a little bit wider apart to be able to accommodate, okay? Especially if baby bump is quite big. You might even need to bring the toes a little bit in because that's going to help to stabilize around the pelvis. And if women have a lot of relaxin coming through the joints and they are feeling a lot of pressure on their wrists, you may need to give them a little bit of padding underneath their wrists. So what I find is quite nice is rolling up the mat, because then you don't have that steep angle on the wrist. You can actually sort of like have the fingers a little bit lower than the wrist. So if you want to try that, you can go for it as well. So now let's try it from here. You're going to bend the elbows, bringing yourself down, and then pressing all the way up. And you might very well need to modify the range. So literally you just do like a little micro bend of the elbows and press up again. And that's absolutely fine. Now guys, let's say that you've got mom here and her lower back is taking a lot of strain. What could you do in this position to help her? Any ideas?
I don't know whether it will help the lower back, but when I'm teaching this for non-pregnant people and they struggle with it, I let them hinge back and come down onto the forearms and push forward like that. And it relieves a lot of pressure on the backs, they say.
Absolutely. So you know what I would do is I would actually simply allow the hinging back.
Yeah.
And again, I wouldn't necessarily get them to do that whole, that's called cats under the wire.
No, I know.
So I would actually, exactly what you said, Julie, just let them hinge back a little bit and come up again. And then maybe what I would also do is how about getting them into a little bit of a rounded spine? Because then as soon as you give baby a little bit of a hug, I'm just going to let Kelly into the meeting. As soon as you give baby a little bit of a hug and you go into that rounded spine, it's also going to relieve the pressure here. And then, guys, do you remember what we also did with adding support? If you've got any kind of pulling on the belly, it's really lovely if you tie some kind of support, a TheraBand, a cotton strap. You know, you can get those sort of big wide elastics that you can put around belly, and especially if women's got a little bit of a diastasis, you may need to offer a little bit of support, and then you can work from here. All right, so a little bit of triceps push-ups. Hi Kelly, how are you?
Hello.
This has become one of my favorites, is doing tricep push-ups one arm at a time, but side sitting. So those of you that have been coming to any of my Pilates flow, so what's really nice about this, you can have your legs just like this. You can separate them, but remember that might be a little bit of a pull on the pubic bone. So this is quite nice. Now you've got one hand free to hold baby, and we just do a little tricep there. So this is a lovely, lovely modification as well, because now you've taken all the stress out of the lower back. Yeah? And then the other one that's absolutely fantastic is, how about just doing this? Yeah? So standing facing the wall. So we're trying to focus on getting a activity and strength around the upper body, but you can do it in lots of different positions.
Would you not teach the butterfly press for them first or not?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. So guys, butterfly push-ups are literally where you're either in a 4-point kneeling or you could be standing against the wall, and all you're doing is retraction and protraction of the scapula. So what's really nice about that is it teaches people how to place their scapula on their rib cage behind them. And then once they've got that sense, they can stabilize, and then they can actually do the bending of the arms and working into the triceps a little bit. Cool. So did all of those modifications make sense?
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So from here, still in a 4-point position, going into thread the needle. This is just one of the most delicious releases around the neck, between the shoulder blades. So you're getting quite a passive rotation of the thoracic spine and of the head. So once you get into position here, you should be able to comfortably stay there for anywhere from 3 to 5 breaths. Now here's the thing, is that the rotation is around the neck and the thoracic spine, but oftentimes the rotation is going to travel down into the lumbar spine if mom is quite tight around the back, and then it could be very uncomfortable having that twist around the belly. Yeah? So depending on how baby is lying, going into any kind of deep twist or rotation can be contraindicated. Okay, if there's any sort of discomfort, get mom to not push it. So when we come into this exercise, I try to encourage women to have as many props available for themselves that they need. So with this one, you guys can come onto your mats, and what I like to use is my restorative bolster. But if you have a folded up towel, if you have a cushion off your couch, or even if you just have a yoga block, as long as you've got something that's ready to support your head, because if mom can't come all the way down here, I mean, that's quite a strong rotation, then it's quite lovely to bring mom here. Okay, so try this now with a prop underneath your head, and just notice how that feels with support. And even if that's too far with your head going down, you can come forward so that literally your shoulder and your head are supported on the cushion. So that's bringing you even more up. The other thing is the knees and the feet. I don't dictate at any point where the legs should be here, because for some women, and especially when you're quite big, as soon as you go into this rotation, your balance. So then if you want to take your legs a little bit wider apart, go for it. And this is just a wonderful release around the neck and around the shoulders, around the thoracic spine. And then you can come up, and then of course you would do the other side as well. How did that feel for you guys?
Good.
So for those of you that have done restorative yoga perhaps, or yin yoga, that's one of the postures that you might do. And of course, we prop ourselves as much as we need to with any of those as well. Okay. So what are some other issues that you think you might need to look out for in this particular exercise?
Surely the neck, Renee. Just got to weight on the neck as well, especially with all that the tummy weight pushing forward with gravity. She's got to be careful, especially if they've got issues with their neck. Not to
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the ways that you can also assist that is to actually bring the hips a little bit back towards the heels. Because then instead of having weight bearing coming right down on the shoulders and the head, you're actually going to move your center of mass back a little bit. You'll still be able to get into the twist and the rotation, but it's going to be much easier around the neck and shoulders. And again, if you've done any yin yoga, that would be a little bit more similar to what's called the tadpole with the twist, where you've got your hips back a little bit. Okay, so absolutely, shifting body weight will make a big difference.
What do you think about putting your head on the overball for resting, because it's softer and you can move a little bit more freely, like you can move the hips and you can move the legs?
Absolutely. Listen, Julie, I am a huge fan of the overball.
Yeah.
So, you know, anytime that you want to actually offer props, as far as I'm concerned, a cushion under the head, or maybe even something underneath the pelvis or underneath the hips, then that overball is fantastic, because also you can inflate it and deflate it for as you want.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of using those balls.
Okay.
Cool. Nice, guys. Any questions on thread the needle? Everyone good? All right. And then, guys, the simple fact is, if you're doing this, if you're doing this in order to be able to release the neck and shoulders, and you know that there's a contraindication for this woman with a twisting around the belly, then don't even do this. There's so many other ways that you can stretch and release the neck, right? Yeah, you could just be sitting upright and you can go into a gentle neck stretch, or you can do the little wrapping of the arms. You guys all know this one? Yeah? So you can go into those eagle arms. That's going to give you that same release around the neck and shoulders without having to go into this twist. All right. Yeah. And Maya, exactly the same thing. Okay, that weight on the neck. All right. So on page 33 of your manual, this exercise is called the 100. So for those of you that come from a Pilates background, you know this exercise. For some of you that haven't, okay, it's a little bit of a technique that you need to learn. So it is designed to work the abdominals, but we don't necessarily need to take pregnant mom in third trimester up into a chest lift position to work the abdominals. So what we're going to do here is a modified 100, which is kneeling upright. So I'm going to actually show you guys what the proper 100 looks like in a normal Pilates mat class. And then I'm going to show you what this modified version looks like so you can see. So guys, this is also going back to breath work. So in the normal 100s, we do 5 inhales and 5 exhales, and it sounds like this. Okay, it's quite a bit of breath work for pregnant mom who now has baby pushing up into the diaphragm and, you know, is already probably feeling like a little bit lightheaded from low blood pressure. So we don't do the 5 inhales and the 5 exhales. We cut it down usually to 3 breaths in and 3 breaths out. Even that might be too much for pregnant moms. So then we'll take it down to 2 breaths, which is absolutely fine as well. And that makes it nice and slow as well. We don't want to encourage any kind of hyperventilating. So in yoga, there is something called fire breath or Kapalabhati breathing, okay, which is the same style of breath, and we don't use it during pregnancy. It's just too much, okay? It's too much heat building. So Kapalabhati breath, I've mentioned this before, sounds and looks like this. Okay, and you can see if you did that for a little while, and we usually do 100 of them, you can see how that actually builds up the energy and the circulation in the body. And it's a lot of work into the belly, not necessarily what we need to do during pregnancy. So guys, this is what the proper 100 looks like in a Pilates class. And then I'm going to show you the modified version for pregnancy. And guys, we keep talking about this as pre and postnatal. It's applicable to a whole other host of people that maybe have the back issues, maybe are a little bit overweight, maybe are completely new beginners, and you just want to sort of ease them into this as well. So I keep saying pregnancy, but just know you can apply outside that group, okay? So with the 100, we would be lying supine. We would have the legs elevated. So already that would be very challenging for third trimester unless you were to put a ball underneath the feet. But then on top of that, we would come up into a chest lift. We could keep the knees bent, or classically we extend the legs long. You can imagine the load now for pregnant ladies. That isn't going to work. And then we go into our breathing. Okay, it's intense. Okay, that's 5 breaths in and 5 breaths out. I'm in a chest position with legs extended. A lot of it is not going to work for pregnant mom. That's why we change the entire body position to look like this. So again, we have baby in place, and you don't have to, but I quite like to use a block just between the knees, because that actually gives you like quite a nice inner thigh connection, and there is a reflexive switching on of the pelvic floor as soon as you use the inner thighs, okay, because it's all part of that deep midline fascia. So I'm just going to turn a little bit this way so you can see the pumping of the arms. So the palms are facing back, body is upright. I'm giving baby a little bit of a lift and a hug, and I've got the gluteals switched on, because if I don't have abs and gluteals working, look what happens. Okay, hip flexors and lower back take over. All right, so lower abs and gluteals are engaged. I'm going to breathe in to prepare, and I'm going to exhale for 3. Or I can modify. Or I can modify. Okay. So simply by changing body position, you've unloaded a lot of the work that's contraindicated for pregnancy. Okay, so guys, let's please try this together, especially for those of you that come from a yoga background, not Pilates. Just come up so you can have an experience of it to see how it feels. And sorry, I've just got a question here from Maya. Could you please explain the reason for the breath work during the 100? Okay, so Joseph Pilates developed a series of 34 mat exercises that was outlined in one of his books. And believe it or not, the 100 is the very first exercise out of the 34. So his philosophy behind it was that you were oxygenating the body. You were bringing in all of this fresh air, getting rid of all the waste and the CO2. So it was all about improving the circulation in the body in preparation for the rest of the work. And there is sort of a little bit of a divide in the Pilates world about if it's a percussive breath, which is what I teach. I teach a as opposed to a single smooth breath, which a lot of people do. You can go either way. For me, I like the percussive breath because it adds a certain rhythm to it, and I've always found a deeper connection to the abdominals with it than the long, smooth breath. But quite frankly, you can choose either one on any given day, depending on how you feel. Okay, does that answer your question, Maya? All right. Okay, guys, so coming onto your mat, if you have a cushion, a towel, a block, to place between your knees, then please try that so you can get a sense of what it feels like. And in this position here, you want to do a little bit of a squeeze with the gluteals and give baby a little bit of a hug. And then you need to keep your fingers together. I want you to try something for a second. Elbows straight, palms facing back, and don't do any breathing yet. Just start to pump your arms a little bit. And can you feel how the pumping of the arms forces the abs to connect already, right? Now keep pumping the arms and just open your fingers. Do you notice that your pectoral muscles switched off? Yeah? Now put your fingers together again. Do you notice how you can connect to your pectorals? So the fingers together connect into the front arm line, which wakes up the pecs. So I'm pretty adamant to people to keep the fingers together. Okay, method to my madness, guys. So squeeze the block with the inner thighs, give baby a little hug, wake up gluteals, elbows are straight, energy through fingertips, energy through your crown. Take a breath in to prepare and exhale for 3. In, 2, 3. We're halfway there. Let's try 2 breaths. And stop and give the hands a little bit of a shake. All right, good guys. So how did that feel for you? So Bernie, Maya, Amelie, you guys might not actually come from, I don't know if you guys have done Pilates before. Is that the first time you've done the 100?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay, how did it feel?
I always try to think of it as how I can include it in a traditional yoga class. So I really like that feeling of being on your knees and engaging the glutes. And what came to mind was that I could possibly, if people are not so keen on doing Pilates and they want to be a bit sort of yoga purist about things, a bit finicky, it could that I could use dandelion breath instead. And just modify that slightly. So that would be a very deep inhale right into the belly and then letting it out in stages. So I think it's great. I really like it. It's a nice almost full body. Nice. Yeah.
Absolutely, because as soon as you're upright, you know, all of those stabilizers have to work. So even though you're not maybe cueing the abdominals, it's amazing that it all has to kind of pull together to hold you upright. Yeah. Cool. And then something that, you know, and it's interesting, Maya, because, you know, I get a lot of people who come to me for Pilates, but I sneak in yoga, and I don't ever tell them. They don't know that they're doing yoga, you know? We're just moving the arms, you know? So it's quite, you can integrate it in a way that suits what you're teaching, and it gets the connections across that you're looking to teach them, you know? So whether you call it yoga or Pilates, I mean, it's just that connection to the body as well. You know, and something that I have taught before as well, which relates to this, is we just cut that breathing down now to 2 breaths. But what I've also done before here is inhale and exhale. It's the same connections with just a fuller breath, and then you can add arms, you can do choreography. Inhale, exhale, reverse it, inhale, exhale, because it's still asking you to keep that, yeah? And then you could add the little percussive breaths as a challenge for people. Cool, nice. And Bernie and Amelie, how did that feel for you guys? Because I know that Ken and Julie know this one.
I love the hand-pec connection. That was fantastic. You never focus on your pectoral muscles much in yoga, so that was instant. There we got it. It was lovely. Very different. Very accessible exercise, especially for beginners.
Absolutely. And it's also quite nice, you know, if you know those tiny little refined things that change the exercise, you know, and then you feed that information to your clients. I mean, they love it because they can feel the difference. Cool. Awesome. Okay, guys, so let me just open up our manual again. So that's the position that we had there. You don't even have to do this kneeling upright. You could do this standing with your back against a wall. You can do this sitting in a chair or sitting on a large wall. Lots and lots of different positions you could do this in. The thing you want to focus on is how do you unload the body so that you don't have to be in a chest lift position like you would in the classic exercise. All right.
Ren, could I do this in a seated position for a lot of my clients who are seated or immobile? Would this be a good oxygenator for people who might have like lower body paralysis, perhaps?
Absolutely. Now, the only thing there is, you've just got to make sure that the arms, the fingertips can reach past the hips. So if you're sitting on the floor, you need to make sure that you're lifted up so that if you have your hands down beside you, you're not going to bash your fingers on the floor. So that's why sitting in a chair, maybe one that doesn't have armrests on it, or, you know, sitting up on a yoga block or 2 yoga blocks so that you can clear your fingers from the floor. You can do the seated, absolutely. Okay. Fabulous. Okay, so we already went through our waves and our seated twist the other day. We also did the upper back and shoulder strengthening. Do you guys remember this one? We did our rotator cuff, and then we did pushing the arms to the side and lifting up through the chest. And it's a wonderful way to connect into the rotator cuff, to open up across the heart, to connect into those back muscles between the shoulder blades. But the other day when we did this, we didn't use a TheraBand. You don't need the resistance necessarily in order to find the connections. You can do this without any resistance, and I promise you, people will still feel it. Okay, so that is our upper back extension. We've done our half roll back. And then on page 38, I love this one. This is the can-can. Okay, so guys, we're going to do this one all together. It's quite simple, so it doesn't need a heck of a lot of explanation. So let's come onto our mats. And You can have baby in place if you wish. And on this one, we're going to lean back. So you're going to be on your elbows, and then walk your knees and your feet together. And then all you're going to do is roll your knees towards the left. There's a little bit of a lift in the right pelvis. Roll your knees through the center, over to the right. There's a little lift on the left pelvis. Roll your knees to the left, hold it there, and now stretch the right leg out. Bending the knee, and we go. Roll 3, roll 2, and you can change the range of movement here. You can make it big or small. Roll 1, and then we extend the leg. Bend the knee, and little rotation. So keep it going. The other thing that's quite lovely to do is to put a prop between your knees, especially if there's any kind of issues around the sacroiliac joint or the pubis. So that as you roll side to side, you're maintaining the alignment of the femur with the hip socket. And you can just keep it there as you do your stretch of the leg. So, you know, the other thing is that for some women, being on their shoulders like this can get very uncomfortable around the neck. And that's when you can take a stack of cushions, or I absolutely love to use the wedge here, okay? And it's exactly the same thing. And now I'm just supported here. I don't actually need to use my arms. And then I can do the can-can from here. Okay. So what's quite nice about this one, again, with that rotation, and the abs are already stretched out, you're going to be getting quite a strong workload into the abdominals, especially the obliques, right? So again, with the abs being so stretched out, the range of movement could be very small and mom will still feel it. It does not have to be a massive range of movement like we're all doing right now. You know, so you can keep it very, very small and you'll still feel those obliques working. And if there's any contraindication with baby lying in a funny position or any kind of rotation around the belly or around the lumbar spine doesn't feel good, you don't need to do this exercise. There are so many other exercises that we could focus on instead, right?
It's a bit like a modified hip circle, isn't it?
It's exactly it. Exactly it. So literally, we've just put our feet on the ground, and it's like doing knees side to side, extend the leg. Absolutely. Cool. I mean, I quite like that one in my everyday normal Pilates classes as well, because it's such a lovely way to connect into the obliques and get that rotation of the spine, and it's controlled. Yeah.
But it's great for the older person as well, and especially when you put the wedge behind the back, again, you can use the overball. Yes,
exactly. Have any of you guys actually got one of these wedges or a C cushion?
No.
It's definitely worthwhile looking into. So, I mean, I don't know what's happening in South Africa here, but you get these C cushions that there's a company here called Equilibrium used to make them, and they no longer manufacture them. And I think they're such a worthwhile investment to have. So if you guys have access to other companies like Balance Body or Stott or something like that, you should check out those C cushions. They're great. Otherwise, you just go off to like a foam factory and get them to cut one of those for you. Cool. Okay, so let me go back into our manual. So that is the can-can right there. And could you guys understand as well why I was talking about having a wedge in between the knees?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool, so it's just like when we were doing our side lying work, and you put a little block between the knees just to help the alignment of the pelvis. It's exactly the same logic here. And then modified swimming. So this is exactly the same as our 4-point cross pattern that we do in Pilates. It's exactly the same in yoga, what they call bird dog, okay? But we're using it as a substitute for back extension called swimming, okay? Because we're getting the cross patterning, so it's coordinating right and left sides of the body, and it's connecting into the back line of the body as well, all right? So think about the modifications that you might need to be ready to give someone in their 3rd trimester here. What are some of the things that you're going to need to watch out for, guys?
The sinking of the back and the belly lowering, the lower lumbar.
So how could you then give a prop or a modification to assist them with stabilizing their back?
Theraband or a ball underneath the belly, or?
Absolutely. So one of those big balls deflated so that there's space for baby. Fantastic. What else?
Renee, shouldn't you be careful of the leg and the arm lifting above heart level, or is that, does that not apply here?
No, so you know what? It's more a fact of holding it there. If you're going to lift and then lower, lift and then lower, that's absolutely fine. It's just that if you're going to hold it there for an extended period of time, it's going to have an effect on your blood pressure. Yeah, exactly right.
I know it's doing the back line of the body, but it's also doing the lateral line because it gets the glutes quite heavily. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now listen, that's one of the things that you might need to modify here as well, is that instead of having a pointed toe, you might need to flex the foot.
Flex.
You know how many women actually cramp in their calf muscles during pregnancy, right? I mean, I remember having a whopper of a cramp in my calf muscle, like in the middle of the night. It was just like so horrific. I didn't know what to do with myself, you know? So the cramping, so flexing the foot, and then just like Julie says, as soon as you flex the foot, you get this automatic connection into the gluteus maximus, which is great. All right, so guys, some other modifications you might need is maybe to shift the hips back a little bit. So you're going to be sort of shifting the weight load back. So it's going to be easier on the back, easier on the neck and shoulders. Maybe you need to put some kind of support underneath the wrists, a block, a folded up towel or blanket, maybe roll the mat. And you might need to wrap a band or an elastic or a cotton strap around the belly to offer some support. Okay.
Right. Also, I once had a lady that when she got like later on in the pregnancy, like 3rd trimester, it was really heavy for her to lift her leg up. So I would just keep the foot and the hand on the floor, but the same movement as well. So not quite open chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? That's still going to get that cross patterning, which is amazing. So whether or not people can actually lift their leg or not, I think, you know, as soon as you lift your leg, yes, we're trying to activate the back of the leg, but it also means that you've got to open the front of the hip. And at a certain point in pregnancy, that's not so easy anymore. No, the hips get really tight. So, you know, you might not have that range. Absolutely. And then as long as you're actually just kind of maybe even just holding the leg and the arm out there, fingertips and toes still on the ground, you're still weight bearing and you're still getting that cross patterning. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Okay, so let's move on to our next exercise. And that is a classic. I think anybody who, even if you don't do yoga, knows what downward facing dog is, right? Everybody knows down dog. And to be perfectly honest, in a lot of my Pilates classes, I use this as a transition, and it is the most wonderful calf muscle release as well. So again, if you think about the ladies who are in their third trimester, maybe those calf muscles are cramping, this is a really lovely way to actually stretch the calf muscles as well. So guys, in our first or second class, we were talking about contraindications like exercise do's and don'ts. And we started chatting about inversions and what is an inversion, all right? And basically what's been decided in the industry is that a full inversion is when you have your feet and your pelvis above the head and the heart. So, for example, going into this, going into shoulder stand, going into handstand or headstand, those are full inversions. But if you take a look at downward facing dog, so my hips are above my head and heart, but my feet aren't. So downward facing dog is considered safe to do during pregnancy. And again, some women might not like it, and then they'll tell you, ooh, that doesn't feel so comfortable, then you know what, you don't do it. But it's not necessarily an unsafe exercise to do. However, there are some modifications that you need to be able to offer. So one of the first ones is taking the feet wider apart. So I also take my hands quite wide apart as well. So taking the feet wide apart, because that again makes space for baby and it provides more stability. And then I encourage mom to keep knees bent. They can do that little pegging of the heels, which feels so good. If they're super flexible, then maybe they can go into that extension of the legs. Maybe if their lower back is straining, you bend the knees and you give baby a little hug. So there's actually a rounding of the spine here. What's really nice about down dog is that there's usually no pressure on the wrist. Because instead of having your shoulders above your wrists, which is that strong extension, you're actually taking your shoulders back. So that's actually quite easy on the wrists. So, you know, I'm not usually concerned about wrist position in that downward facing dog. And it's just a lovely transition. The other thing to be aware of there is getting into downward facing dog when mom is very pregnant is that you just want to think about the transitions there. So oftentimes I will go from a 4-point kneeling position, tuck the toes and then slowly lift up into downward facing dog. I won't necessarily be doing, like if you do salute to the sun in yoga and you do a jump back and a push, we're staying away from all of that. We keep it very gentle. So we walk the feet back, bring yourself slowly into position. So how you get in and out is something you want to consider as well. Cool. Any questions on downward facing dog?
What about the cramping as well? Like, is that okay? Because I know the cramping and the calves can come at any time. Like, mostly for me, it was at night as well.
Yeah.
By the way, something that really helped me was the breathing, like deep breathing. I caught it. I don't know what it did, how it works, but I actually caught it before the cramp got so bad that I could release it from the deep breathing. But just tell them to bend their knees if it's a bit crampy in the legs.
Absolutely. So, you know, the thing is as well that you might be going like, you might be prone to cramps in the calf muscles when you're pregnant, or some people are just prone to cramping anywhere, and also around the feet. The simple fact in downward facing dog that you're reaching your heels towards the ground should actually be stretching the calf muscle already. Yeah. That's stretching the Achilles and then up the back of the leg. So usually it's a lovely release for the body as well. is that you don't necessarily need to make any adjustments there. You know, but I have seen choreography where you're in downward facing dog and then you lift the heels up and press the heels down. That might trigger a cramp.
Yeah.
Heels up, you're shortening the calf muscles, right?
Mm.
So yeah, you just want to be aware of if you're adding any movements there that might trigger a cramp.
Okay.
Renee, could they, if they suffer with cramp a lot, could they lie on their backs with the legs up on a chair and point and flex the feet and relieve the legs that way?
Yeah, you know what? Exactly right. And that was the one thing that helped me when I had those cramps quite terribly, was I would literally lie on my back, but I put my feet against the wall.
The wall, yeah.
My foot was completely relaxed, and then I could relax the calf, because honestly, it was so, for me to dorsiflex was so painful because it was in a severe cramp, and then to go into any kind of point would like trigger it again. So like literally lying on my back with my feet supported completely, and that was the only thing that kind of relieved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's quite nice as well. And if you don't have a wall, then just sort of resting your feet on a ball or on a chair, I think would help as well. But I wouldn't necessarily do any kind of point or flex if they're in the midst of it.
No.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so that is our downward facing dog right here. Lovely, lovely exercise. Okay, so now this next one is called the cat and cow. So guys, do you remember that we did this in one of our first lessons? We were in 4-point kneeling and we did our cat stretch. And in yoga, it's called the cat and the cow. It's so lovely to actually do this standing upright. And I think we spoke about how we would modify if somebody had a diastasis recti. And I think it was Grace or one of you guys said, well, could we maybe do it standing? Absolutely. And that's the exercise right here. So you can also have this so that your bottom is resting against a wall, because then you also feel quite stable. You've got the support behind you. So you've got your bottom against the wall, and you can go through that movement right there. So it would look like this. And then it's quite nice that you can tie it into various choreography as well. So you would be standing here. Guys, remember as well that oftentimes with pregnancy, we take the feet a little bit wider apart because it's more stable. And then you can do your roll down. Maybe that's as far as you're going. Roll back up. You can do your windscreen wipers that we spoke about. We could then go into a little pelvic tilt. So you can do like a whole warm up against the wall, which is quite lovely. And then maybe you want to do your standing cat and cow. So then you're going to just roll forward. And then again, a lot of the time we offer some support on the knees here, because there's a lot of drag here. Bum is resting against the wall. And then from here, we lengthen. And you don't even have to go into extension. The simple fact that you're lengthening the spine, the back muscles are working anyway. And then give baby a little bit of a hug. And round. And then lengthen. And then if somebody's in second trimester or very small and not taking any strain, you could extend the spine and round. Yeah? So it's quite lovely to actually then include within a wall sequence, and then you can turn around and you can do your push-ups, yeah? So all the stuff that you can include, you can move to the wall as well. Okay, any questions on the cat and the cow done in a standing position? Everyone good? Okay, so guys, we're going to do 3 more exercises today. So on page 42 are standing gluteals. Now again, this is done up against the wall, which is quite nice, because then you can actually add it into a whole choreography where you're up against the wall. And the standing gluteals is one of the ways where you can activate the gluteus medius. And you see here with Annie standing sideways, she's got her right hand on her right side hip. She is activating her right gluteus medius. It's not the leg that's against the wall. It's the standing leg that you're actually activating. And for some people who cannot feel the gluteus medius working in the side lying series, remember we did the side lying as well? This is a sneaky little way to wake up the bum cheeks. So maybe when you go down onto the floor later and you do side lying gluteals, the brain remembers it. And this is great for anybody who's in yoga. If you guys think about standing postures that you do, like this. Does this look familiar to anyone? Yeah? This is called tree pose. Look what happens here if my gluteus medius isn't working. And I'm sure you guys recognize that when you teach a class. So gluteus medius has to work anytime you're standing on one leg, okay? So it applies to yoga poses as well as into the Pilates classes. So guys, please come up into standing. We're going to all do this together. And you just need to have a little bit of an empty wall space for yourself. If you have a kitchen cupboard or a bedroom cupboard that you can lean against or a closed door, you can use that as well. And what I'd like you to do is stand with your right shoulder to the wall. Stand fairly close with your feet in parallel. Bend the right elbow and just place your back of your hand and your elbow against the wall. Now make sure that you're standing upright and not leaning into the wall. Stand upright. Place your left hand on the side of your hip. That's where the gluteus medius is. And then pick up the inside leg. If you need to stand a little closer to the wall, then wiggle in. Pick up your right leg and place that leg against the wall. Guys, it doesn't have to be up here. This is not a hip flexor exercise. We're just lifting the leg up. Now, lengthen up to the crown of your head. And I want you to start pushing your hand and your leg against the wall. You are standing upright. And can you feel that there's an activation into the left gluteus medius? So you're standing upright, you're not leaning over. You're pushing hand, pushing leg, activating gluteals. If your knee is taking strain, then maybe you need to soften the knee a little bit. This is not designed to hurt the knee. This is designed to wake up gluteus medius. I sincerely hope that you're breathing. And then on your next breath, release and coming all the way down. And then of course you turn around and you would do the other side. So just come back for a second and give me a little bit of feedback. I see somebody's, let me just check in the chat box here. Oh, you can maybe do the bird dog against the wall as well. Maya, how would you do that? Like, what would be your position there?
Sorry, that was a bit late. I sent that a little while ago. But I didn't mean to in the middle of this now. I'm facing the wall and taking your leg back and lifting your hands in case somebody has a problem with weight in third trimester. I thought maybe you could do standing, because it's about the cross movement, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. So if you give yourself a little bit of a prop, like the wall, that's great because it's that stable surface as well.
Well, that would work perfectly if you were doing same arm, same leg.
Yeah, absolutely. And have that to assist.
Then we're going down another dimension.
So guys, when we did the standing gluteals now, how did it feel? Could you feel some activity on the standing leg?
Massive.
Awesome. Great. Cool. So it's a really lovely way to start to wake up that gluteus medius. Now guys, if you've been to my classes, you know that I've got this massive emphasis, especially for women, to keep the gluteus medius strong, because it literally holds the pelvis together, you know? So a lot of women, if you have knee issues, oftentimes it's from the IT band tightening up and taking over. And that IT band is taking over because the gluteus medius isn't doing its job. Or sacroiliac joints and lower back issues. If you're unstable, it's oftentimes because the gluteals are not doing what they need to do. And oftentimes one side is strong and the other side isn't, and it creates that imbalance as well. Now, you're gonna throw baby bump in, along with all the hormones like relaxin that are making everything shift around and become much more unstable. You really need to make sure that you're keeping as much stability around the pelvis as possible. Okay, so standing gluteals are really important. Well, gluteals are important, whether or not you're standing or lying on the floor or however you want to do it. Okay, fantastic. And then guys, the last two exercises I want to talk about today are again both from yoga. It's on page 43. This is called the Warrior 1 and the Warrior 2. So if you take a look here, and this is exactly what Bernie was asking about here, you know, do you actually want to take the hands above the head and above the heart? So you can, but I wouldn't stay there. I wouldn't stay there for a long time. I think it's fine if you bring the arms up, bring the arms down, add some movements. But you see this picture of Annie on the left side, hands in front of the heart is a really lovely modification. For a lot of women, I'll actually just advise them to place hands under baby, okay, hold baby up, connection to baby, because that offers that little bit of additional support there as well.
Is that because of blood pressure, Renee, overhead?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So as soon as you take the hands up overhead, it can affect blood pressure, and especially with pregnant women, they've got so much increased blood volume that you know, it can put quite a bit of strain on the body without even realizing it. So one of the biggest modifications for both of these is the width of your stance. How wide or narrow is your base? So with these standing postures, we tend to take the feet closer together during pregnancy as opposed to further apart. It's not about coming as deep into the posture as possible. Like in a normal yoga class, you would really bend the front knee and you would come quite deep, and it's designed to open the hip. But here, you don't necessarily want that, okay? So some of the ways that we would modify this is, instead of having this wide stance, so let's say that I'm doing my Warrior 2, instead of having a wide stance where I go into a deep knee bend, and I mean, I can feel it, guys. It's really pulling on those inner thighs. So you think about the pubic here, and if you now up the weight of baby, what's happening to the lower back and the sacroiliac joint? So it's a beautiful strengthening pose, but this is too much. So when we're doing this in a pregnancy class, we'll take quite a narrow base, and then we'll do just a little bit of a bend of the knee, arms open, and that's your pose. Doesn't have to be anything more than that. And again, we don't want to get blood pooling, guys. Remember, we spoke about this as well, is that you don't want to stay stagnant in a position for very long. So when I do some of the standing work, we'll go bend and stretch, and maybe give baby a little hug, and stretch. And we're connecting our movement to our breath. Okay, so you can add whatever choreography makes sense for you as well. And then, of course, in Warrior, that was Warrior 2, by the way, where you've got your heart and your hips facing the side. Warrior 1, you have your heart and your hips facing forward. So you need to be able to pivot the back foot so it's slightly in. That's the same thing. Normally, we would would take this really wide stance here, right? But this can be a lot of strain into the lower back. It's not the best position to be in when you've got this big bump. So we narrow the base, do a little micro bend of the knee, hands to heart, and extend. And we move in and out, breathe in. Hold baby, breathe in. So tie it into the choreography of however it feels best for you. Okay. So guys, any questions on the exercises that we've covered today? Don't worry about the rest of the exercises. On Friday, we will go through it because the rest of the exercises are more focused almost on relaxation, release, breath work. So don't worry about those. We will be going through them on Friday. Okay. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is we've just got a few minutes left, and I'm going to just play you a little video clip. We've spoken a lot, obviously, about pregnancy. Mostly we've spoken about third trimester because that's where we need most of the modifications for any of the work that we're doing with women as well. We've also spoken about postnatally with regards to the physical side, pelvic floor, diastases, hernias, how we can include hypopressives breathing. There's a whole mental and emotional side that a lot of women go through during pregnancy and then postnatally. And that's just what we're gonna look at now. So I've got a little bit of a video clip. I'm just gonna do a screen share for you. Okay, I'll just turn up my sound.
You're exhausted, you're unsure if breastfeeding is going right, why is the baby crying? I mean, there can be a wide range of emotions in the first couple weeks. 80% of women will experience this, and we kind of label that as kind of the baby blues. So that's normal. Expect that to happen, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. However, for about 15% of women, it goes beyond that, and that is what we would label as postpartum depression. If they start experiencing symptoms 9 months down the road, they don't necessarily relate it back to the pregnancy. But really anything in the first 1 year we would label as postpartum depression. Classic symptoms of depression, feeling hopeless, crying too much. Sometimes it just shows up as irritability. Of course, if you're ever having feelings of wanting to hurt yourself or wanting to hurt others, we need people to seek out help. The biggest thing that I want to instill to women is that they just need to be open about it. There's no need to feel shame, to blame themselves. They are not being bad moms. They shouldn't feel like failures. They just need to be open about it.
Cool. So, it's not something that we've touched on a lot so far, but it's, I think, something to definitely be aware of is that, there is that percentage of women postnatally that will get baby blues, or if it goes on longer or to a greater extreme, it's considered postnatal depression. So, the simple fact that if somebody's coming to you for yoga or Pilates or movement, that they're in your space and you're providing an environment where they can feel good physically, have time for themselves, even just have an opportunity to breathe is fantastic. Or if somebody comes to you and says, look, that they're really struggling, or you pick something up that you know that you can refer on to someone else as well. Okay, so I see a couple of questions in the chat box. Okay, so we'll do that now as well. So, I think it is quite important to be aware of that whole sort of emotional side that women will be dealing with as well. And not to say, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or a nurse, But having that awareness, I know that I can refer on to other professionals if somebody needs assistance as well. Guys, so Kelly was just asking about babies that are breech. So remember, this was in session number 3. We spoke about breech, which basically means that instead of being head down, as baby should be, ready to exit, and oftentimes baby is twisting and turning until like month 7 anyway, right? And then generally in 3rd trimester, baby kind of settles in and is head down and ready to go. But breech basically means that baby is bum down or perhaps feet down. And you can actually then, doctors and I know acupuncturists have techniques where they can try and get the baby to turn in utero. If not, you're probably looking at a cesarean section just to make sure that you have as few complications as possible. But generally, if baby is breech, you want to avoid any kind of twisting or rotational movements around the belly and the lumbar spine, and any kind of bearing down movement you want to be able to avoid as well. But otherwise, you know, as long as it's feeling good, all the other work that we've covered is good for mom and good for baby as well.
When you say bearing down, that means squatting. That's not good for breech. Right?
Yeah, no, anything that's going to have a bearing down pressure-wise internally. Like, so in the Pilates room, so we've got some equipment where you sit on it and then push a pedal down, and that's not a bearing downward pressure, or holding a breath, anything like that. Possibly squats, if they're really deep squats, or if woman is holding her breath, then I would avoid that as well.
Would rotational work help move the baby, or not really? That's more spinal, isn't it? Because it's its own little sac, isn't it? So it would be more manual manipulation with the hands, wouldn't it?
That's exactly it. So I mean, I've never seen how it's actually done, but apparently the therapist can actually do this hands-on from the outside manipulation to get the baby to turn. And then I've also heard about there's a point on the baby toe for acupuncture, which actually somehow gets the baby to turn.
To trigger,
Yeah, that triggers.
Did you ever have a bath and you were in the bath and the hot water made the baby sort of totally flip over when it was small enough? I could actually watch my stomach. It was like I had an alien in my body, and it was like this head sort of came here, and then it sort of went all the way around, and I sort of went, oh, you know, what was that? And I remember it vividly. It used to happen when I had a hot bath or something like that, and then after he was born, I was like, I could still feel these sensations for quite a long time, you know, and I used to actually miss it.
Yeah, no, that's quite amazing, because I only really had that once when I was pregnant with Ella. And I mean, I think I was lying in bed and we were watching a movie. We had this tiny little portable DVD player, and we were sitting watching, and then all of a sudden the whole thing did this. But it was the only time she ever did it, and it was an amazing, amazing feeling, because I think after that she almost got too big to turn around.
Oh no, mine was dreadful. He was always moving, and he's no different now. He's like a flippity gibbet. I don't know. He moves about all the time. He's never changed.
That is so funny. But I do remember I used to love to have a cup of Milo, and then within seconds, Ella used to get hiccups in utero, and I could feel
Milo.
These little hiccups.
What's Milo?
It's like Horlicks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so similar to that.
Yeah.
She used to get these hiccups as well, you know, and it is those little things that you remember from your pregnancy. Yeah. Guys, so here's the deal, is that on Friday, you guys are going to design a 20-minute class. I'm going to put you into breakaway rooms, so you're not all going to be teaching each other. Depending on how many people are online, I'm going to create groups of 2 or maybe 3 of you. 20 minutes teaching each other. We'll all come back, we'll give each other feedback, you guys will give yourselves feedback, and then we'll have an opportunity to finish up the repertoire, which is a little bit more of relaxation work, breath work, legs off the wall, that sort of thing. And then we'll have hopefully a few moments to be able to go over anything that you may still have questions about.
I Can't make Friday, is that okay?
Sorry?
I can't make Friday.
Oh, I'm so sorry, but we'll send you the recording so that you can check it as well.
Okay.
All right. Wonderful, guys. Yes, Amelie.
Yeah, just one last question, maybe that you can talk about next session. But during my second pregnancy, I really, and maybe you talked about it in a session, I haven't had the time to catch up on everything, but I really had an ache in the pubic symphysis. You know, I couldn't do any leg adduction. Like, it was terrible. I was even wondering how I was going to give birth because I hardly could open my legs, like really. So I was just wondering, and I know it's due to relaxing, but I was wondering if there was any movement that could help, or movements to avoid. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So we did speak about it very briefly, but you don't want to do extreme adduction or extreme adduction because of the sacroiliac joints and the pubis. Now, it's very possible, maybe without even realizing it, your pubis was slightly out of alignment. So then, even taking like a little block between the knees and giving it a gentle squeeze, is that sometimes you'll be able to pop it, or going to a physio or an osteopath. Oftentimes they can create that realignment for you as well. But it's just avoiding extreme movements. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Fabulous, guys. So I'm going to stop recording.